They're afraid.
How you doing? Good, all right. Nice jacket.
Yeah.
How's everything? Yeah.
Hey, Terry.
We'll evaluate the loss of. Read every one of them. Every one of them talks about, easements pending. Only reason I like that one and some of the others is because we can do them right now. Do them right now with the money we have. Which one?
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. And as our normal routine, please make sure your cell phones are turned to silent or vibrate. And please join me with the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Lord, thank you for this day that you've given us. Thank you for all the people that come to our meetings and are active in our community. Thank you for our board. Keep Tim and his family in our prayers and in our thoughts. Guide them and get them through the tough times that they're going through right now. And thank you so much for the ability to come and meet and try to do the business of this town, make it a better place to live for all of us. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so first is public comment, and we don't have anyone signed up for that, so we'll just move along to the adoption of agenda and consent items. And is there a motion to adopt or to pull anything out?
Motion to adopt.
Okay, have a motion to adopt. Is there a second? Okay, any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just one quick question about the last item on the consent item with the funding, the carryover funding, the new swings. I meant to send you an email, Sonia, and I apologize. How many are we purchasing? Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks, Anna. Thanks so much. That's all I had. I was just wondering what we were getting for the price we were paying. Super. Thank you.
So you're good with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we have a first, a second, motion to approve. Vote to approve, excuse me. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So that passes. All right, so we have appointments, recognitions, and presentations, and we have none of those tonight. So we'll move to the public hearing for the UDO text amendment, and Rebecca will give us a discussion on that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight we have a UDO text amendment for section 152.130 through 135 for enforcement and review. So after recent discussion involving code enforcements and the discovery of a discrepancy in UDO section 152.130 through 135 enforcement and review regarding code enforcement and civil penalties by our town attorney, a text amendment is proposed handling the topic of violations. So recommended changes include eliminating the regulation of having the violation remedied within 48 hours of the notice of violation. We felt in most instances 48 hours just is not a realistic time frame for someone to be able to fix a violation, especially if they're having to hire or have someone come out. And instead, we had the imposition of civil penalties that could be deferred or suspended if the administrator determines that the violator, within a reasonable time, determined relative to the offense and the measures that they're taking and steps taken to eliminate or cure the violation. So it kind of gives a little bit more flexibility depending on the scenario. Each violation scenario can be completely different. The steps needed to remedy the violation are completely different. So this kind of gives the administrator the ability to determine what they feel is reasonable and go from there. And also for clarification purposes, there was a confusion. There is no $1,500 cap on penalties. The ordinance actually gives the administrator the ability to clear or settle up to $1,500 in penalties depending on, again, the situation and if the violation has been deemed clear. So that's not saying it's automatically cleared or waived once the violation is clear. It's just giving the administrator the option to do that if they felt whoever was in violation was cooperative and fixed it in a sufficient manner. So again, it just gives a little bit more flexibility for different scenarios that we have come across. The Planning Board did recommend this text amendment to the Board of Commissioners at their July 7th, 2026 regular meeting and expressed concern about a couple items for the board to consider in their review. The first was not having a set time frame for violations to be remedied and leaving it up to the administrator to enforce depending on the circumstance. And similar to what I explained earlier, we expressed that this structure is to allow for proper enforcement of each violation case, given that each scenario and how it can be handled and remedied can be very different. And then they were also concerned about capping the $1,500 penalty, but as we clarified, that was just a miscommunication or interpretation, and there is no $1,500 cap on the penalties. So in general, and to clarify, Raz was the one who drafted this amendment with conversation with John and I. So if there's any really detailed questions, I may refer to him. But in general, he kind of just reworded it to make it have more standing and be more enforceable. The general procedure would be to determine there's a violation, determine who the parties responsible are, issue an informal notice of violation, which we typically are doing anyway. We really try and work with people first before going the route of a formal notice of violation and civil penalties. So that's just kind of putting that option in the code. And then after that step, you would proceed to the formal notice of violation, in which that's when you can start to establish the civil penalty of $50 per day. And then the next section, which is 152.132, is the civil penalties for violations. It goes into a little bit more detail. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this also gives the option to, depending on the circumstance, and if the administrator feels that corrective measures have not been met, then the civil penalty can be bumped to $100 per day. So it gives a little bit more teeth in letting them know we're serious and you're not making any effort to fix this. And then the next step would be settlement of the civil penalty, which is where the $1,500 comes into play. It gives the option for the administrator to settle or clear up to $1,500. And then the other sections are just cleaning up what Raz thought was necessary. So I felt those were the main things that were changing. Is there any questions for me or Raz on anything?
So I got couple of questions, actually. Who would be considered the administrator? Would that be John or Raz, or who would that be?
It's typically whoever is deemed the code enforcement official, which is in the past has been the planner who's been the administrator, but ultimately John would determine who the administrator would be.
So you'd be the administrator, pretty much? Okay.
For the most part. And it depends on the circumstance. If there's a really extreme violation case, we of course talk about it together and figure out the best route. But in general, the planner is typically the administrator for something like this.
And you could handle things up to $1,500, and then if it went above 15, where would it go from there? Who would start making decisions?
It would go to the board, correct?
To the board? That's
Yep.
what I was thinking, but so is $50 a day could go up to $100 a day with no cap on it? So
There's
if they,
no cap, yeah.
so if they went 30 days, it could be $100 times the 30 days, or if they went 60 days, it could be 60 days times 50 or 100.
Yeah, that's my understanding, yep.
So there's no cap. Okay, go ahead.
I had a lot of discussion with John on this in his office today and stuff. And the way I think the intent was explained to me was these caps, or it gives you flexibility to determine, okay, can this person get a contractor and set time in order to start correcting these things? And it gives you leeway to open the communication to keep the communication clear between you and the person, the recipient of a fine or recipient of a violation. That's how I understand this. In return, we get a few more teeth, as in we raise the penalties a little bit, but they get a clearer procedure of what's documented, how it's documented, and the guy sitting on your left right there in a gray suit and red tie, every step along the process helps him build a case that will actually stand up in court but still have 100% transparency. That's how after I read all this and after I discuss it with some folks here, that's how I interpret it. Now, do I have that interpretation correct, or can you guys, any one of you three, can chime in here?
Mr. Eckendorf, you've got it correctly. I sent you all a confidential email just explaining what we were trying to accomplish here. 3 years ago, the General Assembly passed a bill to decriminalize violations of local ordinances. Used to be the default sanction was misdemeanor offense for a violation of city ordinances, $50 fine, 30 days in jail. The courts and DAs didn't give a whole lot of respect to prosecution of violations of local ordinances, and there was just sympathy to look at other sanctions. So civil penalties are really the only remedy or sanction you have to enforce your planning and zoning regulations in particular. And that prompted a review of what your code said, and the provisions of your code were frankly out of sync with typical practice in Swansboro and out of sync with the state statutes. So what we tried to do was to conform to the state statutes, set up a system where you have progressive sanctions, if you will, starting off with just an informal notice from the town staff that there has been a violation and a request to correct in a timely way. And then first 30 days, they get a little bit of a pass, but if it's a serious offense, the administrator has the authority to say after 15 days or 10 days that there will be a notice of violation. Statute also requires that there be notice of the assessment of the civil penalties. And the NOV going out and the assessment of civil penalties can be on the same day, or there could be a lag there. But the point is, during that first roughly a month, there is some discretion, but after the civil penalties are noticed and they start accruing, that first month, 30 times 50 is $1,500. And the thought was that these penalties don't just go away. I mean, once the notice of assessment has gone out, there is actually a running account, and there is a pending penalty. And so the question is, if the violation, and only if the violation is corrected, what happens? What does the offender, what does the violator need to do? Contact the staff and clear, that is, pay the penalty. Now, just from experience, there are occasions where, particularly if they get a lawyer involved, where if they are very prompt in correcting the offense, and particularly if it was unknowing, not intentional and so forth, the ordinance draft doesn't speak of negotiating, does use the term settle, because these are real numbers, $50 and $100, and we wouldn't want there to be a message out there that these are just pretend numbers and they're negotiable in all cases. Under exceptional circumstances, there may be some legitimate reason to consider a downward adjustment, particularly if you've got a long-term accrual and you've got a lot of money involved. The statute's very clear, case law is clear, that civil penalties are to encourage and leverage the cure of the violation, the correction of the violation. They're not revenue measures, and in a very general sense, they need to be proportional to the harm imposed, and the offenders, the violators' steps in correcting the measure. And how do you apply that standard? Who knows? But the point is, the penalties can't get up to such a point that they make no sense relative to the offense that was committed. At some point, the council, the board would need to decide if those penalties are going to be collected or not. They don't go away automatically unless they have been, quote unquote, settled. And at that point in time, the option is to clear the penalties, collect the penalties, or if there is some settlement, collect some short of the total of penalties, or alternatively, you file a civil action in court in the nature of debt to collect those penalties. So that's the sequence. That's the continuum, if you will, from first discovery of an offense to when it comes before you all to decide what to do next, which it could involve court action.
So by the time they come before us and we do a public hearing on it, we'd have basically a checklist of, hey, did we do our part on how it's written step by step as this thing escalated? And what did the respondent do step by step as it escalated? And each one of those each one of those actions can be dissected here in front of us to discuss each and every level.
Absolutely.
So it becomes more, so does this become more transparent to the people watching this process as well?
Well, it would be transparent. Now, you know, particularly if this gets to be in a situation involving substantial accrued penalties and a violation that is serious and perhaps gets public attention, particularly if there's a lawyer representing the individual charged, that becomes a legal circumstance, and the town has options to file a lawsuit, in which case you start thinking about what the costs would be involved there, and the background law regarding collection of those penalties and the amount of the penalties relative to the offense. And some of that might be in closed session if you're really talking with legal counsel about the realities of and the strategies of filing a lawsuit. But that's down the road, and the idea was that first 30 days, when you're talking about a total of $1,500 total dollars, that's the kind of thing that we thought the board might want to keep at the staff level, just not to have to be hassled with this sort of thing when it's really a minor matter, unless you want to. And obviously, if staff gets the message that this is something you all want to take in your own hands, then this is a may. It's not incumbent on staff to stand up and make that decision about settling pending civil penalties or not.
You got something?
So my thing is a couple things here. I think there needs to be a set time limit, whether that's 48 hours, 14 days, 30 days, and it's cut off there. And I don't think, you know, I think everybody needs to be treated the same when it comes to that, because I think you run into issues if someone makes a decision that, you know, somebody didn't cut their lawn, you know, at 31, but he's okay, but the next guy is not. You know, I think everybody needs to be treated, in a sense, equal. I think you start running into things bad, making bad decisions if you allow a certain person to go longer or whatever. I get it that if they're waiting on a contract because they can't get it or the part can't be brought in, but I would hope that we've been shown that, you know, they've come to you with a, you know, I can't get this guy to fix my place, but there's some type of contract that's written out, you know, by day 30, they bring it to you and show you that I get it on that. And of course, he answered the deal on the lawyer, because that's my concern. If it gets to a certain point, we've got to get you involved, and now you're starting to cost the town. Can we recoup that? If it were to go that far, and I think you answered that.
Short answer is no, sir. I mean, attorney's fees are not payable by the offender. Each side would bear their own legal expense in bringing the action and defending against the action.
Let me read something from I think what he's discussing. Following the issuance of a notice of violation, the period for concerning the violation shall typically not exceed 15 days, provided, however, the administrator may, in his or her reasonable discretion, and based upon the scope of the correction, we're talking about having a possibility to line up contractors to correct something. That can be a coordination issue problem, supply chain, all those things can affect it, right? required specifically a longer correction period. The NOV shall also state that if the owner or other responsible party fails to correct the violations within the time period specified in the NOV, so they do make it specific to you, then the owner, the responsible party may, in accordance with North Carolina GS 160A, TAC 175, be subject to a civil penalty. Right?
Right,
Right,
so,
that's just the enabling law.
That's
just
the meat of this thing.
Yes, and that was very intentional, because honestly, I'd suggested that in most cases, 2 weeks is a reasonable, 15 days is a correction period that can just be a benchmark there. But it's a policy decision on your part, whether you want to have codified a hard and fast default deadline for correcting violations, or whether you want to give some discretion to staff to, but that's why I said typically you're looking at, something around 15 days as being the time when ordinarily the town would expect a violation to be corrected after notice is given.
but just to clarify, the notice of violation will give a time period based on the scenario that the administrator feels is reasonable to fix the violation. So it's never just going to be an open-ended thing. The NOV will state you must fix this within this time period. So it just gives a little bit of flexibility depending on the scenario that we're dealing with. But it won't ever just be an open-ended thing. They will have a deadline that they will have to fix whatever the violation is.
Yeah, Jason.
So to Tim's question, that means that it won't be the same for everybody because it could be different extenuating circumstances?
Right, 15 days is the standard. If it's just a typical violation, that's what Raz recommended or that we agreed upon would be a normal standard or reasonable standard. But if it's, like, as he explained, a different scenario that would require less or more time, it just adds that sentence to give us that flexibility to enforce a different time period if we felt that was needed.
Can I add a question then? Does our historical data and processing these indicate that we're having a lot of cases that go a long time without being closed? Because I think that's an important data point then to Tim's point about having something maybe a little firmer and a deadline if we feel like, for lack of better words, people are abusing the system. I like the language that Commissioner Eckendorf cited was the same that I got circled in my document on page 14, having that 15 days in there, I think is good to keep that piece in there. But I would just ask then, based on historically, if we're seeing a problem, so for lack of better words, do we need to tighten it up a little bit by putting some sort of cap on it, on how far this could extend?
That would be up to you all. I don't have the exact data set off the top of my head. Typically, we're able to contact whoever's in violation and figure out a way to fix it before we get to the point of having to do a notice of violation or civil penalty. But you're never going to have 100% success rate. There's always going to be people who choose not to comply, which is where this gives us a little bit more teeth.
So you'd say, Rebecca, that's the exception, not the norm then, that this gets dragged out?
Yeah, that's my general understanding. I mean,
Mayor, one thing I'll add, after the NOV goes out, the state statute provides that the offender, the property owner, or the other responsible party has the right to appeal. And per the statute, any enforcement action is stayed. So there is that possibility. And we've had a couple of appeals that go to the Board of Adjustment to challenge the interpretation of the code and the application of the code on a particular situational property. And so that's something to think about, that 15-day time clock conceivably, or a 30-day time clock, the various intervals that the city staff has to deal with in trying to get the ordinance complied with. It can be a stop and go kind of a thing. And there is that possibility that if they give a notice of appeal, everything's frozen, and it could be, as much as a month or two before it could be heard before the Board of Adjustment, and it's no enforcement measures accrue or can be taken while that appeal is pending under the statute.
But with that being said, me personally, I'm okay with that as long as I know the process is going. I think at the end of the day, that's what we want to see, that the process is working My other deal that I had on here was the $1,500 being the max. I don't think that's, it needs to be a lot more than that for the simple fact that we've seen in the past that some people just come up here and pay it and they can afford to do that. I think that's, it needs to be.
More than $1,500, so couldn't it?
There is no $1,500 cap. That
Okay.
was the miscommunication with
But I
that.
guess what I'm, with you, what you're saying is maybe the board feels like it should be a little bit more severe penalty, for lack of a better way of putting it.
The
That-
higher than $50.
What they've explained is that, and clarified from the planning board meeting where the concern was that there was a cap, there is no cap.
Right. There's no cap, right?
$1,500 is the point where the administrators are able to make their judgment calls before anything has to come to us. So there is no cap.
Yeah, right. It depends on how long it takes them to get the thing done. But I guess what I'm thinking is, and I'm just going to throw it out there, we've had people say that, oh, go ahead and do it, we'll violate it, and we'll pay the fee. It's kind of a slap in the face to the town, and it takes the bite out of our enforcement code. So that's where I'm coming from with it. I think that's
So
kind of what you're saying.
raise the per day fee is what you're suggesting?
It needs to probably hurt a little bit more, maybe. I don't know. I don't, you guys are far more educated now. I adhere to what you tell us to do, but I don't appreciate it when I've heard a couple of times that people have said, we will just pay the fee, don't worry about it. That's insulting to the town, if you ask me. So, I mean,
No, Bill, I agree exactly with your comments there. I mean, I think that's part of this. We want to be seen as, being serious about enforcement and with our code and so forth. And I think anything we can do to strengthen that should be something that we definitely review.
you want somebody to feel it if they violate it.
Exactly.
I think the text moves in the right direction from what it was before. It specifies a process. It specifies as each step of escalation. Where the other text that I was reading, the strike-throughs, didn't specify those levels of escalation in a specific manner in which the respondent has to respond, okay? And then what our actions as a staff would be, and the considerations. But making sure I just got this, I'm going to make an assumption. The Board of Adjustments, when you actually have a notice violation, escalates to the Board of Adjustment. That's the,
Correct, yes, sir.
if he wants
An
to appeal,
appeal.
if he wants to appear,
Of course.
and he goes before the Board of Adjustment, is there a monetary cap at the Board of Adjustment that they have?
Well, good question. The appeal stays the accrual of penalties. The appeal is on the determination that there was a violation. The appeal is not to the amount of the penalty or any other sanction that might have been
Right.
sought. You go to the Board of Adjustment not to, because there's no criteria before the Board of Adjustment on whether it's $500 or whether it's $5,000. So that's not the board's call. If, say, you have an appeal that goes to the board and they affirm the appeal and it is not appealed to Superior Court, so the determination that this violation stands, the question of whether you can collect the civil penalties is a question for the board and its lawyer and its staff, and whether you'll take the step, whether you'll authorize the step of filing a lawsuit or not to collect.
As having to sit up here on the board, I have a document that specifies each level of escalation. Vice is what you had before. It didn't really specify specific roles that every person plays in this. This moves in the right direction, in my opinion. Because now I can weigh it, okay, we were at this level initially. This is their reaction.
And
Then
the
we
50
went-
and the 100 was just numbers that I suggested and put in
Yeah.
there.
I-
I mean, the state statutory maximum is $500.
Yeah.
So you could start at 100 and go to 200, or go to 175, or go 75 to 150, whatever number you think would be your choice. That would be fine. I just put those numbers because they were nice.
And that's what I was getting at, was saying if I'm out on a limb by saying it needs to bring me back to reality, and I'll listen to what you guys have to say about, how justified it is to the amount of penalties.
At the end of the day, if it comes to that level where you got to go to court, this ball's now in your court. you're asking us to give you a set of rules that you can take before administrative law judge or the civil court, whatever, and say, this is our process. It's very easy to understand. Here's our actions. Here's the respondent's actions. Now, this process, does that move in the direction you need it to move in compared to what you had before? Like, which do you feel more comfortable going to court with for us? The previous one or the amendment you're asking for? That's what I need to hear from you.
I think I have
So-
suggested the sequence that makes sense. Now, honestly, when the notice goes out, or when the informal notice is given, when the official NOV is sent in accordance with the statute, and then when the assessment of the civil penalty kicks in, and whether the town decides after 30 days that it should go to $100, that requires a separate notice that you're now being charged $100 a day. That's really not what would be considered in a court action to collect the accrued penalties, is if the accrued penalty sum satisfies the judge, whoever hears the case that day, that it is not totally out of sync, totally out of proportion to the offense that was charged. And I went to a collection action in a matter that Swansboro was involved with several years ago, and the previous attorney actually got the matter under judgment, and it was $25,000. And the offender was not represented by counsel. And I will say, in my own heart of hearts, I said, dang, if it was a lawyer there, this lawyer could so easily have gotten this reduced to a much smaller sum, because that's a huge amount given the violation. The judge upheld the order, and it was collected. So that has, yes, I have feelings about that case I'm not going to express, but that's the way, that's the outcome. You get it reduced to an order, and is the judge going to say, this is, you may have accrued $30,000 in penalties, but I will reduce this to a judgment, and it's going to be for $5,000 or $10,000. That's the kind of conversation we would have.
The job of a judge is to look at, when he's deciding a case, where's the rule book? This is the rule book. Okay? Which rules would you rather have to explain to a judge? The one that was the as it is, or the one that's amended? That's, I guess, what I'm asking.
The proposed new, obviously the whole thought was to
You think you have to
make it sync with the statute.
You think you can, so you think
Yes.
this,
Yes.
It's an improvement from what we have.
this is
before.
my blueprint, Judge, this is my process. The previous one doesn't have the clear blueprint of all the actions in each level of escalation.
That was the thought, because we've taken a lot of cases the judges would point out typographical errors in syntax, ordinances that were just hard to understand, things that had inconsistencies, and you get penalized for that. And this was an attempt to clean up and to make it something that, I won't say Swansboro would be proud of, but Swansboro could, with a very clear conscience, strongly defend the action taken and, convince the judge.
I have a question. Does the board want to raise the $50 a day? If you do want to raise the $50 a day, then we also need to raise the $1,500 cap, because that would escalate pretty quickly. Doesn't need to come to us after 15 days.
So real quick, I know since I've been sitting in this position, I haven't seen a notice of violations of what we got going on, but I can tell you from what I know of and seen, the majority of our violators are commercial businesses or individuals that own historical homes. And I can tell you, in my opinion, $50 a day is not enough to make it concerning to them.
So, John, can we do that today if the board decides to raise that limit? But we would also need to make an
Yeah, you can
adjustment
amend-
on that $1,500.
As a result of the debate after the public hearing, you can amend the draft ordinance and adopt it tonight.
So how much would y'all like to see it per day?
Yeah. Tim?
I'd have no problem with $100 a day and then have that go up after that to $150. And then, but that 2-week total would be $3,000 then, that would be left to the town manager where he could adjudicate up to.
First 30 days, that would be the number. Yes, sir.
Just throwing it out for discussion.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. $100 a day, $150 after that. But at the period for the administrator to, or that cap on that needs to be longer.
Okay, so 100 as
It
the
needs to be
initial.
higher.
I think you can't I think you shouldn't write a law that targets a demographic. I think you need to write a rule or a law that works for everybody. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. $50 a day could be devastating to a homeowner trying to do a small project or something like that. I mean, you have to write a law that constrains both parties, I think. I don't think you can write a law you shouldn't be in the business of writing laws that go after one group of people. Would you agree with that, Counselor?
I think you can have conversation in deciding what that number should be that talks about businesses versus residential owners and so on and so forth. That I don't think the language in the code will codify that you're targeting one group or another. It's just going to be a number. And again, you have an opportunity if you consider that there's a real hardship in the amount of the penalty and the property owner corrects violation, that option to settle for a lesser sum is always there. That's
At the administrator's discretion.
Up to 1,500.
during that first 30 days, yes. I mean, during that, whatever the penalty may be, but during that period when staff has discretion.
So we don't have to have a separate schedule of fees for residential vice.
I think that would present a problem. I think it has to be, well, I know by case law, it has to be a uniform fixed fee. That's case law in North Carolina.
Well, currently our HOA is $100 a day. So,
Okay, so how do we want to move forward with this? We
We
got to open
also
a
need a
public
public
hearing.
You have
hearing.
to open the hearing at some point.
Okay. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what they want to do. Okay. So at this point, I guess we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And there's no one signed to talk during that public hearing. Any more discussion?
Yeah, just one more. I want to support you in this amendment because I think it moves in a more positive direction. The only if we make this decision in favor of the amendment tonight, we're going to have to live with it, and then we should collect data on did the process improve over time. Were we able to take someone like, I don't know, a serial offender, I guess, and move them through the process at a more, how do you say this? Not a higher tempo, but we saw it progress at the stages that we're expecting. You know, how do we collect data? And then do we come back here in a year and a half and do this over again? I mean, the only way to find out, I guess, is to make the change and then monitor it and put data points to it and say, are we clearing more cases or are we ending up with more problems? Planning board is going to have some input on that. So will the amendment or the assessment, what do we call that advisory board again?
The Board of
The
Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment, yes. The folks you work with as a team. So I'd say move forward.
Okay.
It moves in the right direction, and then collect data and see what you guys think of the product after a year and a half.
Put it in practice and see how it does. Yep.
Okay, so go ahead, Russ.
Mayor, just one clarification. If you're talking about the initial penalty being more than $50, the way the ordinance is drafted now, you have the initial fee during the first 30 days at that $1,500 total amount. The administrator can clear and settle the penalties, excuse me. If you go to 100, the question is, do you want to have a second echelon, a higher sum that kicks in if And then what would that number be? Because we haven't heard that number yet.
That's what I was
You would need to,
wondering from the
you would need to
board.
fix that.
Okay, so we're in, right now, I guess we're in public comment, so nobody was signed up, so does anybody want to add anything? No? Okay, go ahead, Raz.
Just being a legally required public hearing, you probably should ask if anyone's present.
Okay, all right, never mind then.
In the way this is written, Raz, John, Rebecca, is there a, after you take that person to each level of this action, does it offer for them an off-ramp at each level saying, hey, look, you know, what I mean by that is for them to take action to escalate and get compliant? Is there a process that they understand, okay, now, if I don't go, now I'm going to go to a higher level and I jeopardize my investment even further? Or is there an easy off-ramp to take here? You're showing them what it is. Easy off-ramp at this point. We go to the next level, the penalties are going to increase.
That is the intention. And the various notices that Rebecca is required to send out at each of these steps, the NOV step and the assessment of civil penalty step, we just included in the ordinance what the statute requires. I mean, there can be further guidance, instruction, you know, helpful suggestions, admonitions. You can editorialize in these notice letters that go out if the circumstances have that make sense. So it's not as, but is there some statement in the code, in the ordinance that we propose, that says that we're not encouraging offenders to appeal the determination or to seek to reduce the penalty? They have that option from a realistic standpoint. But that's not in the code, because the $100 or $50, and then the after 30 days, those are real numbers. And I think the town probably should have those numbers be hard numbers from a standpoint of what the ordinance is.
So with that, I guess we'll close the public hearing, and I would need a motion to approve or deny ordinance 2026-06, amending the 152, 130, 135 enforcement review. So is there a motion to approve or deny?
Can we motion with adjustments to higher those rates?
However the motion is forthcoming. I mean, if there seems to be a consensus to go to 100, 200, 100, 150, that's just fine. But at this point, it is another question that needs to be decided in the motion. What those amounts, two amounts would be, if you want two amounts, if you want an escalating penalty sum.
I move to approve.
Okay. So we have a motion
Approve
to
as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And then any discussion on that?
Just a quick one, Bill, just to reiterate, I think as points have been made, a lot of rigor went into this, and I think it is an improvement, better than what we had. And as been stated, I think we can reevaluate it in 12 months and look at the historical data. And if we see it as being an issue that we feel like people are dissuaded from compliance because of the fees at what they are, then I think we can reevaluate that. I think that's fair and reasonable.
Any more discussion? So right now, then, we're going to keep the fees as they are. That's my understanding. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so we'll vote on it. And if there's no more discussion? No? Okay. So all in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. All opposed? So we approve that and as written.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So, no business. Okay, business. Review of sidewalk and priority, it'll be John.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. As the agenda item title says, a review of the sidewalk priority list. This is a rather significant project the town has desired to take on for a number of years, and actually part of the projects were completed 2024, 23, that time period. And this remaining project schedule is what was left over. And in '24, the board at the time looked at the remaining 5 project areas and recategorized and reprioritized them and gave the staff direction to take a little bit further. And in '25, we entered into a contract with Arundel Engineers to give us construction plans for the actual construction of all 5 project areas. In '26, we received those plans from Arundel, and along with the designs, we received cost estimates. And I think that's the point where we're at now is the significant cost to complete all, it's about 7,000 linear feet of 5-foot wide sidewalks in 5 different locations around town. All these locations are actually on DOT streets. Most of it's in the right of way. Not all these are in the right of way, and we can look at these shortly. I don't have the list of property owners that we need to acquire easements from, but over the 5 project areas, there's 31 easements that we will need to require. All the project areas require 1 or more easements to be acquired, except one. It's at that short, and I'll show it to you, I think it's project 4, the short piece on Pine Land. That's a real short segment. And I believe it's the least expensive project area as well. So I just want to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to go over the slides are in your agenda packet, but just give everyone an idea of the 5 project areas that we're looking at, their lengths, and I've got the cost estimates that were prepared by the engineer back in February. This first one, it picks up at the high-speed gear where their existing sidewalk is, proceeds down Old Hammock to Main Street Extension, turns left on Main Street Extension, and ties into the existing sidewalk at Municipal Park. It's about 2,000 feet in length, and that estimated cost was $276,788. The second project area is the most expensive one on the list. It's obviously the longest one as well. It's a little bit over, it's 2,483 feet. Estimated cost of $417,979. This is on Queens Creek Road in front of the high school. Goes to the intersection with 24, turns right, and ties into an existing sidewalk at Norris Road by Starbucks. Priority 3. Hammocks Beach Road at Moore's Barbecue. It's hard to see on that slide. But this would tie in a significant, a lot of the work is already done, as you see, going down Hammocks Beach Road. Most of this work is right there at tying into Moore's Barbecue, proceeding down Hammocks Beach to an existing sidewalk behind the cul-de-sac, the subdivision, right? I don't remember which street that is. We tie it into an existing sidewalk there. That length is 976 feet at a price about $145,487. The third one is the shortest one I talked about a moment ago on Pine Land on Old Hammocks Beach, tied into an existing sidewalk on Old Hammocks. The short segment of only about 153 feet. This one we do have the easement for. This is the only one I mentioned that we have the easement, and now we have the design. So this one doesn't need any more work. If we were to actually construct this one particular project, its estimated cost is $41,114. And the last priority, number 5. The various segments along the north side of Highway 24 from Old Hammocks to downtown. It's about 1,411 feet long. at an estimated cost of $227,467. So all 5 projects total $1,108,835. And of course, one of our biggest challenges is finding funding to do all this at once. And I guess that could be part of your discussion, is how we move forward. Do you want to reprioritize any of these and perhaps use some available funding that we do have? We have about $297,645 dollars available that are specifically assigned for sidewalk projects. There's $96,396 in our town capital reserve fund for sidewalks. We do have an old state capital infrastructure fund grant of $108,249. That is for sidewalks. And there's another DOT pot of money that we don't have, but we have access to, that they have, that's assigned to Swansboro as an old sidewalk project, the last project I talked about earlier. Money we didn't use, it's still open. They did call me recently and said, well, we still intend to use it. I said, yes, please hold on to it. We do intend to do some sidewalks in the near future. So there's almost $300,000 there we have that we could do some projects. There are some options, to seek the additional funds as far as any grant funding, maybe going to our local delegation for special appropriations for sidewalks. I know we've been trying to talk to a lot of our state and federal representatives here lately, and this certainly could be one of them that we talked to about getting some special appropriations for this particular project. And also there's fund balance. I remember a couple of years ago, the board did appropriate $500,000 for sidewalks, but at the time, we didn't have any engineered plans. We weren't ready to go. It took us some time, but now we have the engineering plans, but we're lacking a little bit of the funding. So you do have some options. It's nice to have a shovel-ready project, but just, of course, at a little over $1 million, that's a fairly significant project for the town of Swansboro to handle on its own without any additional funding assistance, such as grants or appropriations.
John, just to clarify then, and I believe I heard you say this correctly, but the SCIF money and the NCDOT money doesn't have an expiration date. No one's pressing you hard right now to obligate those funds, correct?
Nope. Not that I'm aware of.
How much is that? Well, what Wayne was just talking, the total of how much?
The DOT project funds were $93,000, and the SCIF, the what's called State Capital Infrastructure Fund, was $108,000.
So how much do we have total for sidewalks? Like
Total, $297,000.
So really moving forward, funding and the easements are the two big linchpins in this. If we had both, we could do these projects tomorrow.
That's the next step, is we need to go ahead and start the process of notifying property owners of if we need an easement, which we need 31 of them, to ask them to give us an easement. Certainly that'll be our request, but then of course, we may have to acquire it, at market value, a small 5 or 10 foot strip across the front of their property. Because it's going to be outside the easement in a lot of locations.
The main one of those being there's no easement that we've obtained for that. The Main Street extension to One Harbor Church, we have no easements acquired there, but we do on some others. I want to bring up one thing. Of course, sidewalks to the schools are absolutely a priority. $400 and something thousand that we got the estimates for, but none of that property belongs to us. DOT, Board of Education. I've spoken to one of the county commissioners and county manager, and I think our mayor and Mayor Pro Tem have these conversations all the time with Jumpo. I think we reach out to all of our county commissioners and encourage them to encourage DOT in this state to help us with that portion. And there's also the Safe Routes to School grant that we could apply for on that one.
Safe,
The Safe Routes,
safe routes to schools.
that grant.
Yeah, we have not applied for that.
Because that takes a big chunk of this entire estimate, that I think that we could get the state and DOT to, obviously, they've got to know that we've got 3 schools there and not 1 sidewalk, so it should be a priority for them.
The, one of the things I want to bring up is, I've been dealing with this, for the last 5 years. To me, this is a pretty easy choice to make. If you look at it, there's 3 of these projects that are pretty much off the board automatically. We set a priority 1 for a reason. Okay, the Highway 24, Queens Creek thing to 417. But one of the biggest thing, some people on the board may not know this, but the Hammocks Beach, there's no way we're going to get those last 3 easements. Told that. Doug's smiling. He was part of it. Bill was part of it too. Let me finish.
Which
first,
Hammocks
Doug.
Beach?
But more than likely, I ain't saying it's totally out of the realm, but more than likely we are not. I hope I'm wrong. But, so if you take those 2 off, I mean, it comes down really to 2. You know, fill in the gaps in Highway 24 or Old Hammock and Main Street Extension. The difference between mainly on those 2 is I can tell you daily basis, Old Hammock and Main Street Extension have foot traffic on them with little kids walking on the side of the street. I'm sure our police chief can tell you that also. It's a dangerous situation. It looks like it falls within the category for what we have. I think, my opinion, with the current situation, we need to stick with priority 1 and move forward.
Anybody else have discussion? So if we were to do all of them, we'd have to allocate $800,000 basically from the fund balance, right? Because we've got basically 300,000 roughly, which we don't want to do that. No way we want to do that. I kind of agree with Jeff. You know, you've got 297. You can either do the one with the Old Hammocks and Main Street, or you could do, that's all you could do, or you could do, add these 2 together and do those. But which gives you the most safety factor and the most connectivity with the rest of your sidewalks? Mm-hmm. Just which ones would be the safe, you know, give you the most safety factor for our population, and which one connects better with all the other sidewalks? And I kind of tend to agree with you. Sidewalk. I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, Doug?
I'm going to appeal to 2 people in the room right now. One is you, John, and the other one's the winner of the first Sam Bland Award back there. You guys have been around here a little while now. A lot of people want more sidewalk, and man, that has been, like you said, Jeff, this has been a 5-year project now in counting. So I would just make an appeal to, if you're a property owner out there, and this is my honest appeal, I would hope that you would lend an ear and listen to the quality of life benefit that getting more sidewalks that encircle that triangle that consists of Old Hammocks Beach Road, the 24 corridor, and yes, our park, getting those things completely accessible to people on foot and bicycle, as well as connect the schools. That's the overall connect the schools to the neighborhoods. But if you're out there and you've got the authority to grant us the easement, I appeal to you, to the better nature of the better angels of our nature, to please cooperate with our town staff in making that happen. That's all I can do is ask. I would ask the rest of the citizens if they know the authorities that are holding those easements to also try to make that appeal. We got to raise our signature on this and you got to let your voice be heard, I guess, is what I'm saying there. Because even if we had a $1.1 million right now, the easements still stand in the way, except for one.
Except for one.
We've only got one project that we can actually move forward. And that doesn't bode well for us and our sense of community, I think. I'm not asking for peer pressure, and I'm not asking people to go out and aggressively protest. I'm just asking for us to appeal to the better angels of our nature. That's it.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I think we need to reach out to all of these that we still need easements on to see if we can even obtain them before we make a decision on where to allocate this money.
Chris?
Mayor, concerning right-of-way for sidewalk easements, it's a big question mark. I mean, some folks might be perfectly willing to have sidewalk in the front yard. Sometimes it's controversial, and folks say it diminishes privacy, and they don't like that. It's a rule of thumb. You start by paying market value, appraised market value on a per square foot basis, and for something akin to a sidewalk easement, you start with 50% of fee value. So that's fairly well-established practice, among cities buying right-of-way. I mean, you can ask for a dedication, you can ask for a gifted easement, but I have no sense of whether these sidewalk easements will be controversial and whether there'll be right-of-way challenges or whether they won't be. But those are the value benchmarks that are fairly commonplace.
So does it boil down then to what we already have easements on is how we should proceed, do you think?
The only one you have is the short piece on Old Hammock
41,000.
Yeah. But then the most expensive one, there's only three. The one on 24 in Queens Creek, there's only three property owners: the school, the state, and I believe it's Lanier.
So then we still have about 250 left for sidewalks. Is that one 41,000, I think? The one you're talking about?
The small short one's 41,000. Yeah.
So and we got 297, so we'd have about 256 left.
I'm pretty confident. Then there's, I think, only three to get obtained for Hammock Beach Road behind Moore's Barbecue, Walmart. I think there's only three property owners there, and I'm pretty confident in those. I think that'd be a really good project. That's 145. So between that one and Pineland, you're still in your existing, what you have available now to build sidewalks.
So do you need direction from us on which ones to pursue, or do you have it?
If there's some you want to focus on, reprioritize and focus on two or three of these now, and let's work on those easements, or just should we try to get all 31 of them? Like we have construction, we have plans, we're ready to go. I think it'd be probably smarter on our part to go ahead and see if we can get easements for all 5 project areas, since who knows when we might get appropriations, and they like to see that you're ready to go with a project instead of having to wait for you to go get easements.
For that Main Street extension, Old Hammock, I've spoke to the majority of the property owners there already now. That was a couple years ago. I don't know how they feel about it now, but I don't think there'll be an easement problem with that.
Yeah, encouraging.
2 things. Can you pull up the Old Hammock Beach Picture again.
How do I go backwards? Oh, damn it. I believe that's it right there.
Yeah, that was done a couple years ago. It was completed. The south part that's red, that's already,
Yes, I believe the only remaining piece is the two up top near Walmart.
gotcha. The other thing is, obviously, I know possibly here in a few weeks or a month or so, I think we need to get our stuff in order, possibly meeting some state representatives and letting them know what our priorities are. I think having those things in order, been one of our top priorities of seeing where we can go to get funding for this, so.
I just think it goes back to the easements. I think if without the easements, then it really doesn't matter what our prioritized order is. And obviously, then we can go after the funding for those items. And to your points that's been made, I mean, I think priority number one, it doesn't have a lot of properties that require easements. And that could be a worthwhile endeavor. And then as well as priority number three, we said we have 2 out of the 5. I say we reapproach the owner of the other 3 to see if there's any way to obtain those, and if not, then obviously that's at a standstill. And potentially we could pursue priority number 1, and the easements are already in place for number 4. But I think to your point, John, we can't go in 30 different directions, but if we could focus our intent on a couple of these to try to get those easements, then I think we could move forward.
So we've got 297 that we need to use, right, or we can use, right? And so we need to try to figure out where that's going to be allocated and how easy or how hard it would be.
There's no expiration on that 297. So if we're able to secure any additional funding, yeah, that would be great. But if we wanted to proceed and have a project now, we could.
What's your thoughts on it, of which would be the best to pursue with our situation?
Yeah. Obviously, if you put out all 5 at one time, it's economy of scale. You're going to get a lot more interest, a lot more bidders, and your unit price, I think, would be significantly less. And if somebody had to mobilize for a couple hundred feet, I think your unit price can be a lot higher.
Okay.
So how long do we wait? Obviously, hearing Jeff talk about, he's been working this 5 years, is when do we come back and make the decision that we move forward with the ones that we already have money for that can do, and waiting on people to tell us whether or not we can have access or not to right of ways or whatever. I mean, do we put a limit on this and start making decisions, or
So I
wait
think
another?
what I'm hearing, we want to try to get easements on all the properties that we can, right? Is that basically what we're saying?
Yeah, but how long do we say, hey, it's been long enough, now let's move forward for what we have and what we know that we can get completed?
I would think try to get easements on everything on every priority, but how hard would that be to do? Is that
We don't know yet. If it's all voluntary, we don't have any pushback, and we don't have to do any appraisals for market value. That would really slow it down, but if it's all voluntary and if people were more willing to participate, it would go pretty quick.
So should we try to get easements on all of them, or?
I think it's worth the effort.
John, how hard would it be to get the easements for the Highway 24 from Old Hammocks Beach Road to downtown? Because those are all businesses. And I know that would be delayed a little bit because the American Legion has to do the work that they're having done.
And I don't
build that up,
have the
and that's
list
not
of
until
who the
next
property
year.
owners are on those. I didn't bring that with me. A lot of it's, like you said, it's going to be commercial on that section.
I think we need to reprioritize, see what we can do now, but time is of the essence because none of these contractors are ever going to hold to these prices that they've given to us. And if we kick the can down the road, it's going to be more expensive next year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
as of right now, we have everything for the $41,000 for the Pineland Drive. And then the next best one would be Hammocks Beach to Moore's, because that's just one owner there that we had a handshake agreement on to get those, so hopefully he man of his word. But that's a pretty large population, residential population, to connect that sidewalk for.
That's
And
dealing
that's all
with
below
one
our
person,
budget?
I think, right? Is that just one person that has the easements for that?
Correct.
Which would be Charles
Mr.
Rawls, I believe.
Yeah, Mr. Rawls, I
Mhm.
believe the last three they're all his.
Do you think he's willing to do that? Yeah, I would think he would be.
I think realistically, we can get those done. Everybody on the board needs to be calling their county commission.
So at least we get two.
Jumbo, and encourage them to help us with these schools, along with applying for the grant that goes with that also. And then
Alright, so how-
Highway 24, we have to wait for that work to be done, so potentially we'd have to allocate a little bit more money for that.
Okay, so how do we want to proceed? Just keep it like it is, or was that be your suggestion? What's your suggestion, John, to keep it as it is, or?
The priorities are fine. I think it's just a matter of how the funding is available and how we progress with easements, that if we're finding we got one or two priority areas secured, then we might want to come back and say, well, do we want to wait or just proceed with these two? And of course, if you go out to, like I said, you go out to bid for 7,000 feet of sidewalk, you're going to get a lot of interest. But prices, what they were a year ago, I'm sure the price of finished concrete's not less. It's going to be more expensive on these estimates, probably a little bit old now. They're out there about 6 months. So, it's changing a lot.
So are we saying we want to get some sidewalks done, or?
Why don't, we start, attaining the easements and come back to you and just kind of give you some progress reports, how we're doing on these easements.
Can we do that
And then
next meeting, maybe, or is that too soon?
Might be a little soon next meeting to actually get an easement, but to keep you all, up to date, where we are, I think it's worth the effort to, at least to start getting these easements. Because at some point, we need to start.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
feeling from the board,
Yeah.
the angst that we want to get some
I know it's been
sidewalks down.
These sidewalks have been a priority for a long time. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Anybody else have anything they want to add? All right, so I guess it'd be something, thank you, John, for that. I know that's kind of, it kind of muddled a little bit, but thank you for that. What you saying?
Here we go. All right, on a good note. All right, so this is our revenues over and expenditure report for as of June 30, 2026, okay? If y'all recall back budget days, workshops, I had projected revenue at $6,130,000, and then the expenditures were $6,385,000, and there was going to be a deficit of $255,555. Well, that is not the case. As you can see here, your total excess of revenues over expenditures are $275,836 as a surplus. A lot of that is because of your vacancies. Which we had a lot. We had the chief building inspector, public service director, police officers, fire department. I had a vacancy for a couple months, admin services also. So a lot of it is due to the vacancies, which is normally that every year. But I just wanted to let you know that we're still processing invoices related to last year, and the auditors will be coming in and doing their annual audit, and they will come to you to present the town's financial position when they are done. Normally, it's around November, but I don't know with the new auditor how that's gonna, but it'll definitely be on time. So I want to let you know that. All right, and then this is your actual, and your total excess of revenues over expenditures are $361,703. So what this says is that if, you know, you'll see it in the next slide. I'll show you right now. See how you have your encumbrances of 85,000. So there's probably going to be some savings there too. But I don't want to say that yet because not everything is processed. Okay? So overall, the total expenditures are at 80.81%, which is 19.919 less than the monthly projection. However, 10% of that is really your $500,000 sidewalks that never happened and your $250,000 for Project Coffee. So really, it was a 10%, not 20. Okay? And then your Stormwater Enterprise Fund as of June 2026, your excess revenues over expenditures were $47,949. So this will just go back into the fund balance, the stormwater fund balance, and then I guess when we figure out what we're doing with this master plan, those funds will be used towards that. And then this is our Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. If you recall, I stated there close into June that we may need to do a budget amendment. Well, we didn't have to do that. We came right in on target here. Now, the excess of revenues over expenditures were $24,087, but just a reminder that that's going to absorb the depreciation expense, which is a good thing. The LGC, when they do their annual audit, if they see that we can't cover that depreciation, they're going to come back and say, well, why can't it, be sufficient, self-sufficient? So the good thing of that we increased our fees because of CPI adjustments and all that. So I think we're going to be okay. I don't think we're going to have to do anything next year, I hope. So we're in good shape there too. Here's your summary of your town current debt and balances as of June 30. And here's your summary of cash accounts and current balances as of June 30, 2026. And here's your grant update, your active grants. Okay, here we go. This is the next couple slides are the provides information that y'all had requested regarding pending grant opportunities and including grants that have already been submitted as well as those that we anticipate to submit. So as you can see, we provided the grant name, application status, grant purpose, amount requested, application deadline, anticipated award notification, and the cost share match. This here, they've already applied for them. They've already submitted. And then I'll go back. I just want to show you. And then these are the ones that are to be submitted. Now, I know that Anna has come to you to get approval to submit for the Parks and Rec, the Part F and the Land and Water Conservation. So they're on there. And of course, we don't know what the project costs, so we stated up to, we don't know what that cost yet is. So, and remember that one match will leverage for the other. So Is this what you were looking for? Is that what you were requesting? I mean, I don't know what,
For me, yes, I think it's very helpful. And Tanya, on the previous slide, if I had a couple questions, if I may.
that one?
I think these are probably better for the fire chief, but I was just going to ask Jacob, could you just go right down each one and just give everybody a quick thumbnail of what that is, just so everybody's synced up on that, if you don't mind?
So the top one is a grant for a skid unit that would go into the back of a pickup truck, since we don't have a brush vehicle. We're still waiting to hear on that, and they haven't released any notifications. The DSIP grant is the second one in line. That's for the supplemental funds for the Emergency Operations Center complex. The Fire Prevention and Safety Grant is a fire prevention trailer that's interactive with 3 different community risk reduction items. So it would have a wildland urban interface, a smoke alarm, a fire extinguisher prop, as well as a severe weather information. The underwater ROV is essentially an underwater drone for search, recovery, and any kind of side sonar we may need. And then the apparatus brush truck at the bottom is applying, in case that top one was unsuccessful, for the entire unit. And then, because we don't have that at all. That's all of those.
Thank you.
And those deadlines are relatively soon.
They are. The grants dropped on us. Nobody really knew they were opening. There was no information sent out, and then the NOFOs just popped up. They will probably take until September to actually notify, except for the DSIP grant. That one you should know on or about August 11th, with no later than August 17th if you were accepted, awarded, or declined.
And so that defense infrastructure, that's the one we've been trying to get for the last 3 years. It's highly competitive to try to obtain that, but every year I think we get a little closer. So.
We were really shovel ready this time, so yeah. Fingers crossed. Correct.
Any other questions?
No other questions about this per se, but I think this is like a segue, or a second part of this is something I think a bunch of us have talked about. I know, John, you and I talked about last Tuesday, was prioritizing those items, and I think the sidewalks is definitely a big part of this when we have those opportunities. When we have those opportunities to host federal and state elected leadership, when we have the Representative Davis, the Senator Buds, Senator Tillis, what have you, Representative Gable, Senator Lazar, when they want to come visit Swansboro, and they ask that term, what can we do to help? And I think it would help us and be advantageous to us to be synchronized on what that answer is. If that is sidewalks, if that is stormwater mitigation, if that is assistance with capital improvement equipment like the fire engines that we know are coming online and so forth. And I think it just adds to our credibility and our consistency if we're all saying the same thing. If, for example, the mayor is hosting one of those visits, but he's unavailable one day and it's just the town manager and maybe a commissioner or two, but when they ask us that, what can we do to help? If we're all telling them, for example, it's funding for sidewalks, it's funding for stormwater mitigation. So I would just ask if we could develop those talking points so we are synchronized and we're prepared. And I know we've got a visit coming up within, the next 30 days with Senator Budd.
I actually have one tomorrow.
Oh, there we go. Great timing then. Just so again, because they talk to each other. And a lot of us who have been former military know we see these all the time when the general, the admiral, or the SecNav or the Secretary of Defense visits the base and they ask, what can we do to help? And we always try to have that speak with one beak to make sure we're all asking for the same thing, regardless of what command we are, so we have a better opportunity of obtaining success. So I think it'd be worthwhile just for a quick discussion if we could talk about those items so we have those priorities. And, and I would offer that from the conversations I've heard, I think sidewalks and stormwater mitigation are 1A, 1B, probably, and then getting after capital improvement equipment If, for example, the senator says, well, I can't do that, but I could help you with some equipment, what's the number one priority for equipment? Well, then we know, hey, it's probably getting after those fire engines and the cost. So I would just offer that up for discussion. If people agree, disagree, agree with those top three, for lack of better words, talking points, or so we can just be synchronized.
Yeah, I agree with that because, there's been times, I don't know about some of you, but have private conversations with Wyatt before and Mike Lazara. And I always give them my opinion, what I think I need, but I think we all need to be on the same page. So when that opportunity arises, we're down with it. Because, and the way I know, for me personally, I look at it, we have a stormwater problem, huge. We saw the numbers. And nothing's been done with it over the last few years. So for me, I would like to make our number one priority for any type of opportunities moving forward. We're not talking about anything that we're already engaged with. But I think stormwater should be first. I think sidewalks should be second, and capital equipment, especially for fire and the police department and public service. They have some old equipment. In my opinion, they've been ignored for years. So we need to, all of us, be on the same page whenever we're talking to these elected officials.
I agree. Would that be something we would do a workshop on, or would we put it as an agenda item? What do you think and one more thing I want to add to that, I think our number one focus over the last 3 years that I know of has been the public safety facility, so that's kind of honed us into that one, blinder type thing that we've been honed in on. But now that we're getting past that, we do need to prioritize, and I'm like with Jeff, stormwater would be my number one priority after the public safety, and then sidewalks. And go ahead.
Well, was it 1776? A bunch of gentlemen got together, pledged their honor, and said, we resolve that this needs to happen. And that's within our power to do, to draft a resolution as a board saying, these are our priorities from here until the next election, or till whenever we decide to cast that date out there. And if you can get everyone's on board, and we can send that resolution to all the state representatives, and we can appear with that, say, we've got our stuff in order, we agree, we're government that actually works. We're unified in the idea of providing this to our community, and we are a public service. We've cast, we don't deal with division, we deal with what can we do. So if we've resolved to do that, we've done at least 3 resolutions since I've been here.
We've done so.
They're not legally binding or anything, but they send a message. And the message is, this is what we resolved to do. And it's that 50,000 foot command that keeps the staff and the board and the advisory boards moving in one direction.
So I wanted to defer back to you about, do you think we should have a workshop, or just how do you think we should go about setting those priorities, John?
To what Jeff said, John, I think looks good. I think that's a great starting point we had tonight. I think what we're developing with the talking points is additive to this. And I mean, exactly. And I think, and pursuing a formal resolution, I think has a lot of merit, but it might take a little while. I think I'd make a motion tonight that we just prioritize our talking points for elected visitors as and I like the idea of stormwater mitigation myself, because I think it impacts the largest number of people throughout the community, and we're talking about their property, their livelihoods, their businesses, and so forth. So stormwater mitigation, sidewalks, and capital equipment being our top 3, and then we can work to more formalize that if it's some sort of declaration or what have you.
We sure got out on a tangent on the financial report.
Yeah, this list only represents, equipment and other programs that we are aware of and we don't have funding for. but there are other things out there we don't have any funding sources to go after,
Right.
such as we have the stormwater master plan or the sidewalk master plan. We have those, but like I described a moment ago, the funding sources just aren't there right now. So yeah, that needs to be on the list, but they didn't make this schedule here.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why I said I thought that was just a natural transition into prioritizing this, especially with a visit tomorrow, and we know some others are going to happen between now and November and beyond that.
Exactly. But, I mean, a work session would be certainly appropriate to do something like that, to look at the big picture and get a better understanding, so you all have, when you do talk to other elected officials, you have a better understanding of what our needs are.
Is there any issue then with making a motion to have those top 3 talking points and have a vote to that, just to get us started, moving in the right direction?
I've got it, yep. Yep. If that is appropriate, you can do that, yes. If you want to record that in the minutes, that'd be fine.
So you want to make a motion to
Yes,
prioritize our,
to prioritize our talking points for elected visitors, and messaging. And I would say those top 3 are stormwater mitigation, sidewalks, and capital improvement equipment.
first we'd get a motion to do that, right, in a second, and then we'd have discussion and decide which ones we want to do. Is that how you would do it?
Yeah.
Or would you make a motion for 3 right off the bat?
We'll just bring you back the ideas and let you all massage the list that the board feels is appropriate, that is your priorities. So let us put that together, and we can just make it an agenda item at a regular board meeting and just.
That'd be great. And trust me, that's fine. And
think-
I'm not trying to create a lot of work, because I think we're all pretty much synchronized
I
up
think
here.
you are, yep.
And I would just ask when tomorrow during the visit, that is what we press with the elected official, if they ask how they can help.
So what we've been basically focused on is the public safety with our public elected officials, representatives. I would think stormwater is where we want to go, and sidewalks, and then equipment for,
Capital investment equipment.
so, yeah. So we're all in agreement on that, I think, pretty much. But you would bring it, should we do that? We shouldn't do that every meeting, just next meeting, we could do it as a future agenda item. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, next month, yep. The August, what's this? August 25th? Okay.
Just have it then?
Just be presented as part of this agenda item here, just a little, maybe expand it a little bit.
Okay, all right. Look, we opened a can of worms on that one. That's all right. Allie, it's your turn now.
Good evening. The anticipated agenda items for August 11th and August 25th, we have the annexation of the EOC and PBS parcel portion of it, fire service update, monthly financial report, and talking points for elected officials with those key points that you just added for the next agenda for August 25th. Is there anything else the board would like to add for August or September?
Yes, we still have to appoint an alternate for historic.
You're talking about a board member, commission member for the historic? Is it
It's an alternate.
Oh, okay, yep.
Okay. Note of that.
I have something too, is a group called Zoe Empowers that would like to come and just tell their story for about 10 or 15 minutes. Linda Folger is the lady's name, and it's kind of similar to what Mr. Mabry's doing, but they're going to Tanzania, and they're teaching people how to farm and grow their own food, and they'd like to just make the community aware of what they're doing. I can get you the contact information for that.
Please. Thank you.
Yep.
Obviously, our town manager's going to be leaving less than a year now. how do we get this process started? And what I'm getting at is, obviously you see a lot of ugly things going on right now when it comes to town managers out there, people not doing their due diligence and stuff like that. But how do we work that into starting that process? Is that,
But that would be a closed session thing, wouldn't it, to talk about future, as John retires again for the 12th time. Would that be a closed session item that we talk about future town managers, or would we do that? That would be closed session, yeah. But we can put that as a closed session, Tim, to your point. Yeah, that we need to have.
Mayor, the steps that you all choose to follow, for example, if you're looking at a private consultant or going through the lead municipalities or assigning, search responsibilities, that all is in public session. When you start narrowing the focus on individuals, then that becomes something that you might decide to handle in closed session.
It would go on a regular meeting then first, right, to get a committee together? Is that what you're suggesting?
Talk about the process or how you're going to go about it or timing, that needs to be an open session.
Yeah, well, let's put that on the agenda as soon as we can.
When you start talking about specifics about individuals.
Not pushing you out or anything,
that's
just making planning for. Bye. Oh.
I'd like to continue the conversation on the sidewalk priorities. I'd also like to see if we can review the ordinances for the lights and signs throughout the
Anything else that you would like to bring up from future agenda items that are on the list?
I don't think so.
All right,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. All right, so there's no items moved from consent. So we'll move no public comment or signed up. Does anybody want to? I always open it up at the end if you didn't sign up. And so there's no public comment. So we'll move to manager's comments then.
If you have any, the projects brief and the planning matters reports are updated in the back of your agenda. There's quite a bit in there. If you got any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer those. Other than that, Mayor, I don't have anything to add at the moment.
John, just one on the update about the Main Street dock replacement project. My understanding then is, are we still waiting on the camera permit?
We are not actually waiting on the CAMA permit. We're waiting on waivers, riparian rights waivers. There's on either side of the dock, we need to get the property owners to provide us a waiver. We have one, we're waiting on the other, and they live out of town, and communication's been difficult with them.
So no really anticipated timeline on when we might get that waiver?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
just to add to that, this kind of in a non-responsive type communication process right now. We're reaching out, but we're not getting any communication back. And reached out to the point that we've sent the forms, right, for them to sign and get back to us. Had conversations relating to it and indicating that agreement could be reached, but it's kind of been kind of gone silent on us a little bit, which is unfortunate because
it is. That without that, it stalls the whole project.
That's what's holding that up right now. Okay. Any department reports? I don't guess, or anything anybody wants to bring up?
Unless you all have any questions.
Anybody have questions? Guess not. All right. So we'll move to board comments. Kamara. Camera. I did that on purpose. Microphone.
Wayne.
Come on. Hey, thanks to everybody here tonight. Thanks to everybody watching from home. Thanks to the staff. Appreciate your patience. I know we dive deeper into some topics tonight, maybe more than some people may like, for lack of better words, but trust me, it's the intent of this board across this table to get more things right in support of our community than we get them wrong. So that's why we do those type of things. And really appreciate the dialogue tonight, talking about the priorities, because I really do think at the end of the day, it's going to make us more resilient, it's going to make us safer, and it's going to improve the quality of life of our citizens, our community, if we really get after those focused items with that one consistent voice and improve our chances of obtaining some of those funds. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Just, it's a game of inches, and every down counts, I guess. We are advancing the ball a little bit. The first thing you have to have is obviously the board has to agree on what direction to move in. And then we hand that off to the staff, and they conduct the actions, and we provide some oversight along the way. And with that, I want to thank everybody here for their role that they play in that teamwork, in that session. I guess, how blessed, how fortunate we are to have a town such as Swansboro. That's it.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I know he just walked out, but good to see you, Mr. Brown, here tonight. Obviously, he's had some few issues here lately. I'd like to thank the staff as well as the residents over the last couple of weeks. Appreciate all the prayers and cards and flowers, and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Everybody for showing up tonight. A little larger than last by a few people. Thanks, everybody online. Appreciate the work the staff does every day. Thank you for everything you guys do for us.
Okay, well, I got a lot to say. No, I just have a little bit. Again, as usual, thanks to everybody. You know who we're talking about. We attended a county commissioner meeting a week or so ago, and something piqued my interest was they were talking about Queens Creek Road and the bridge and all, and that when it was going to be funded. So I reached out to Jumpo, and it's still on the state transportation improvement plan, but that time frame is from 2028 to 2037, and so it's still on that plan, but no money's been really allocated to it yet. Let's see, there's going to be a visit tomorrow from Senator Tom Tillis's aide, not Tillis, but his aide's coming tomorrow, that we're going to talk about some of our priorities that Representative Don Davis hopefully has already passed on to his office. So we'll be discussing those hopefully with him. Ted Budd is going to come, Senator Ted Budd is going to come on September 3rd and meet with us and talk about priorities. Our understanding is that would be more of an informal type, get to know each other type thing. His aide that we've had a relationship built with is going to be moving on from his office somewhere else, and I think that's the reason for the visit, really, to be honest with you. There's a historic preservation meeting in Wilmington that some of us will be attending this coming Friday. And been having ongoing talks with Mary Pat and the Veterans Memorial Gardens people about we're all aware of, and so just making the public aware of that. We're trying to work out things with that. Wyatt Gable reached out and would like to have a meeting possibly here in Swansboro concerning the commercial fishing industry and supporting that. And if it happens the way we discussed it, we would have people from Onslow County come to Swansboro and some from Carteret County, Moorhead area, down east area, hopefully, and they would hopefully bring some local seafood, and there'd be some food involved with that. But that's just in the planning stages, so don't hold me to that, but we've been discussing that, and Swansboro would be a good location for it, so it'd be good for our town. And that's all. Well, one last thing. Swansboro United Methodist Church has gotten a lot of notoriety. They've had a summer reading, summer literacy reading program that has made a good impact on a lot of students. Not a lot, but a pretty fair amount that may not be exposed to that. So that's all I have, unless anybody else has anything to say. I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? I would think so. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? So we are adjourned. And thank y'all for coming out tonight. It was kind of a, what's that? You know, I made a few. It only takes me,
Every week's worth.
yeah. It only takes me like 12 years.
Yeah, and I'm ready.